Ladies and gents, it's taken me over 2 years, but I've actually done it. I'm uploading a seasonal roundup video less than a week after the season ends, and I didn't even cut corners since I got through 5 shows as well as a series that I missed last season that only recently released on Netflix. Now, this paragraph's gone on for far too long and you might click off the video, so how about I keep your attention with Kaguya-sama Love is War Season 2 has seen the show further characterise its central cast, while also adding new characters, while also creating new circumstances, while also adding more emotional moments, while also continuing with the humour that made its first season popular. How the fuck do you do that? Basically every character in this show now has extra layers to their personality. The standouts being Ishigami having a redemption arc that I didn't know he needed nor that I wanted, and Kaguya truly coming into her own this season. If I had any complaint, it would be that we didn't see enough of Chika, but I'm weirdly okay with that because I fully admit it now. Kaguya is best girl. There is not a single moment which falls flat. There are even some moments which are better on a second watch. For example, when I first saw this scene I thought, hey, kinda looks like something out of Monogatari. And then a second watch had me realise this is literally a shot-for-shot recreation of the first scene of Bakei Monogatari. Also the fact that Shirogane thinks Hayasaka's name is Smithy is something I found funny. No idea why, but I just did. Episode 3 could have frankly been a season finale. Episode 11 could have been a movie, and some would argue it already is. At the moment, this show is currently in the top 30 highest rated anime of all time on MAL. And yeah, sounds about right. Coming out in the UK on the literal last day of the season, BNA is Netflix's answer to Zootopia. Not that one. The story follows Michiru, a girl who suddenly wakes up having transformed into a beastman, a half animal, half human. And so she moves to Anima City, a city entirely populated by beastmen. With this being a trigger work, I want to make a lot of comparisons to their last work, Promare, and the similarities are more numerous than I expected. For starters, there's the part where the people with superpowers are hated by humans and attack people out of instinct. There's also the part where the villain is predictably obvious, and the plot twist regarding the villain's powers is literally the same. I admit that from a storytelling perspective, both BNA and Promare could use some work. However, where Promare tries to cover up the shortcomings of its plot with a sense of self-awareness, BNA manages a bit more successfully to cover the shortcomings of its plot with its characters. The leads are serviceable, and they do, God forbid, change their behaviours due to interactions with other characters. However, where the cast truly comes alive is with the side characters. My personal favourites including the scheming Mink, Marie, the clueless yet lovable Jackie, and Flip, a literal gang orca. And of course, the expressive character design boosts my enjoyment of them by double. The colour palette is largely consistent, although the fight animation is not necessarily the best Trigger has done. Had there been better conflict within the story, I'd view it higher, and SSSS Gridman has proved Trigger can do great villains. But I'm not disappointed, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they'll do with Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Zack Crypto. Although a series that Netflix didn't delay the Western release of was Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex 2045. I'm kinda divided on this one, because on the one hand, fuck is this shit? But on the other, this actually feels like the original Standalone Complex series, when it wants to. I should address the elephant in the room and say that yes, the animation is not the show's strong points. The original SAC is one of the best looking animes of all time, and this doesn't quite complement it. But despite a few moments where the CG shatters the immersion, you do eventually get used to it. As for the story, it continues on years after the end of the original series, and it depicts a world that was economically fucked in the ass so hard Section 9 disbanded. The first half of the series is the gang getting back together, which I think should have been quicker, especially because it means that the second and more interesting arc isn't finished by the end of the season. But I think Netflix wanted to sequel bait this show anyway. The cast still retains what makes them interesting, and Togusa has actually developed into a very different character, but a good one. As for new characters, there's the Prime Minister, Tate, who was subtitled as Teito for some of the earlier episodes. Not sure what's up with that. I was impressed that they didn't just go down the evil leader trope, and despite being an obvious puppet, he does have his own character. The music, while being nothing on the original series score, it's still decent when it's allowed to have a presence, although I feel it's quite underplayed. So, if you like Standalone Complex, then this does offer something, provided you can get over the CG. But at least it doesn't break the immersion like, oh god, Comic Sans! Memeable font aside, Sing Yesterday for me is an anime which I assumed would just be another ride on the feels train, only to discover it was in fact a ride on the reals train. This is a show about adults going through a quarter-life crisis, involving their work and romantic lives. Can't really say much more about this show than the characters are some of the most real I've ever seen in anime. There are some valid criticisms, for example, the ending can be seen as a bit rushed, but even then it didn't feel unwarranted. A personal criticism I have is that much of the show's formula is person walks in on two characters together and assumes they're a couple. But the thing is that leads to conflict, and that's where this show shines. We like all these characters and root for each of them, despite the fact they all want completely different things. Another criticism I have is that we don't see enough of Haru. She is easily best girl, and we need more of her. The show also doesn't have an OP, which I think is for the better, as you can't really apply imagery to this show, unlike... Holy fuck, is that a pasty? DORO is technically from the winter season, but only came out over here during this season. So I'm talking about it now. If you want to get a feel for this show, imagine an urban fantasy novel like Neverwhere, except if it was excessively violent. Every character is a psychopath, be they villain or hero, and even then, each character is lovable in their own right. Once again, be they villain or hero. This show has a fucked up sense of humour, which I enjoy. Any number of body parts will come off, and the character designs are delightfully weird, be it a giant sentient cockroach or a man with a turkey for a head. I'm being brief about it because this is my current anime of the year. Go watch it. Although Kaiman doesn't have my vote for Best Lizard, because that vote would go to this bad boy here. Some people want anime girls with a nice rank. I cut out the middleman because I only want rank. This is Tower of God, a show based off a Korean manhwa, but made in Japan, meaning that the subtitles will display the Korean name, but the characters will be saying the Japanese name. My experience with JoJo would advise me against this, but I'm gonna go with what the subtitles say. However, I admit that figuring out that Shinzu means God Water because of the Japanese actors saying Kami no Mizu made me feel incredibly clever. The story starts with a boy named Bam agreeing to climb the Tower of God to find Rachel, the girl who effectively raised him. At the top of the tower is anything you desire, and that attracts many people, and all have their own motivations. While Bam does seem to be a bit one-dimensional in his simp quest, there is a payoff for that, which is that it services a very good plot twist towards the end of the series, a plot twist I liked so much that I actively went from indifference for a second season to full-blown anticipation. And thankfully, before this twist, there's a lot of side plots to keep you intrigued. Kevin Penkin is on the OST, and while it doesn't hold a candle to Made in Abyss, there are some fantastic tracks which straddle the line between hype and tense at the same time. The action is serviceable, not necessarily mind-blowing, but not a weak point either. The character design is where the show flourishes, with each character being very distinct. But of course, there's gotta be a best girl debate. There has to be one. But I think I can resolve it by paraphrasing the hit artist Kia. Not Rachel, not Anak. Don't want Yuri, just Rag.